This is how you come down. It's a new day. What day is it? Sunday? I think it's Sunday. Let's have a look. Sunday, October 6th. Time is frickin' screaming along as usual. A little early in the morning. We've completely destroyed half my property here with my friend and his excavator. It's funny, I've never worked with an excavator. I've worked on construction sites, big commercial sites for many years, and lots of cranes and stuff, but never an excavator. Holy cow, those suckers have got power. Man, they just grab a tree and snap it in half like nothing. It's crazy watching what it can do and how fast. I got a whole pile of, a lot of trees out here that are rotting and dying and just making a big mess. So we decided to clear them all out and make it a more of a pleasant and safer, I guess, pastures for the horses. So that's what I've been doing. Got one more day of that today, and then tomorrow is reward day. Tomorrow's reward day. Reward day for me is doing what I freaking love to do, and I think I have 16 trail cameras out on the coast there, where that one particular few different herds of Roosevelt elk running around. And I should have some amazing video content of them. I should be able to have a real good idea exactly who is living around there. It's a draw area. You can put in for a lottery ticket to win a tag to hunt there. And it's just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to go out and see them. They're enormous, they're massive. And to try to call them up and videotape them with a real good camera, which I haven't got my perfect clip yet, but maybe tomorrow. So that's reward day tomorrow. Can't wait. So, I'm up early. See if I can get some voices heard. Adventure Dog has got a treat out of the freezer down there. Lots going on in the world right now. A lot, as usual. I could talk about much, right? Now, I have a couple of recent emails here. One's called, what's the title of this one? It's titled A Response. Mark it as read. Idaho scientist here. Questions about Mindspeak. I asked about them disappearing and being invisible, and I got no response. Asking a question doesn't mean they will answer you. Thanks for reading my email. And one question I did ask them during the period I had Mindspeak with them was regarding dogs and why they don't like them. It's because they're always harassed by dogs and absolutely hate barking. It seems dogs bark at and chase them everywhere. I explained that we humans love dogs like Sabe love their young. The answer that was given and was to the point about dogs, when my encounters and Mindspeak ended, he/she said they were headed towards the big lake to check on relatives. That was during a large fire in July 2022. Meanwhile, nothing has happened in a while. I think it's the low-frequency sound waves keeping them away from my cabin emitted by my atomic clocks. Signed, a member of the club I never wanted to join. Thanks for reading and what you do for the people. Okay, and I appreciate that response. For me, from what I've learned and observed firsthand, and what I've learned from all the tens of thousands of eyewitnesses, when it comes to your sharing of the exchange about why they don't like dogs, if I had to be asked for an opinion, I would say they absolutely blatantly lied to you, right? We don't have to back up their statement, if that's what you received and this is who you're speaking with, we don't have anybody who has came here and reported their dog chasing them. We've had, I think, maybe one or two real weird, very uncommon experiences were sent in of seeing these beings with dogs or with wolves, like cruising along, like they're all hanging out. Is that possible? Anything's possible. First off, at this stage of the game in life, anything's possible, right? So I'm definitely not the guy that'll ever sit here and say, well, that didn't happen. It's possible. I don't know. I wasn't there. But from what we have gathered from the thousands of eyewitnesses here, these beings make dogs cower and hide and crawl under vehicles and fight to get inside houses. Right? We haven't had anything sent in of the opposite. So I would be, it just further backs up how many people who allegedly are in communication with these people have said, you can't trust them. They don't tell you the truth. They lie. They're tricksters. So far, that seems to be quite apparent across the board. Don't you guys think? I mean, you guys have been here as long as I have. We've all been hearing from the same people, right? So, yeah, I believe if you sent out a question and you received an answer and that was the answer, I think they just basically probably looked at you, smiled, smirked, giggled, gave that answer, and turned around and walked away. Right? It's a simple one. It's a simple answer to get somebody to shut up, maybe. Yeah, here's your answer. Go away. Leave us alone. I don't know. But no, I believe there's a lot more to it. And I think if we were shown that truth, let's just say, in a fantasy world, a dog spoke fluent English to us and told us why. That would make a whole bunch of truth unravel before our eyes, right? Obviously, truth that these people don't want us to know. Why not, right? And these are all questions I try to encourage everyone to ask themselves and dig for yourself, right? Why not? Why do they not want us to know why dogs are absolutely terrified of them? Why not? This next one is titled A White One. Recent email. Dear Steve, my experience happened when I was 10 years old. Our family was packed into the station wagon as we were moving from Manitoba to British Columbia. We were going through Rogers Pass, and at the time there were only 2 lanes coming and going on the highway. This was also back before seat belts were mandatory, so we 3 girls were able to be in the seats in the back of the station wagon. I was staring at all the beauty of nature I had never seen before with wide eyes. Oh my God, no doubt. I could not imagine what that would do to a kid who grew up in Manitoba and now you're going through the Rocky Mountains. Amazing experience, right? It's pretty awesome once you first hit those Rocky Mountains coming from the east. For some reason, I do not remember, I decided to go to the other side of the car, which was up close to a rock wall. And I smushed my face to the window, trying to look up to see if I could see the top of the mountain. What I saw instead was a hint of a cave, and in front of it, a huge, hairy, white man waving his arms about. I yelled, "It's a Yeti!" I don't even know how I knew about Yetis or why I didn't yell Sasquatch, and immediately my sisters were beside me and with their faces plastered on the windows looking up. They also yelled. Not sure of the words they yelled because we were noisy. Our parents told us to settle down, stop making so much noise, etc., not believing us a bit. The sighting was only seconds, just long enough for me to see, yell, sisters to get over and see it, and then it was over. We drove around a bend and he was out of sight. Then we were trying to convince our parents that we saw what we saw, but to no avail. I remember he was standing with his legs apart and waving his arms over his head, but a little clumsy-like. He had shaggy, longish hair and looked ratty and was all white from what I could see of him. No idea of height and weight. Many years later, I learned that the military has white ghillie suits, and horror gripped my mind. So I asked my sister if maybe it was that as memory starts to fog up. Maybe, sorry you guys, it's early. I asked my sister if maybe it was that, as memory starts to fog up with age. When you miss a little punctuation, it throws my simple brain off. Easy. A man needing help, she told me in a firm, no-nonsense voice. That was no man. That voice was the one I heard when she didn't want to talk about something. And that is my experience. From Lori. What do we got here? Now, P.S. Now, Steve, you can read this out or not, depending on your views. I'm going to give you a link. This guy's found evidence of giants in rocks. He shows you the rocks, then points out areas on the rock and shows you what body parts from humans match these rocks. Some are huge boulders. One of his videos, he's holding in his hand a rock that he had the shape of an onion and shows using diagrams. That is a hair follicle. Another video he has on location with huge boulders that seem to have a natural bridge in between two parts, and then shows the spots, little holes where certain tendons go through, and again shows us a diagram of human anatomy. He even took some of the rusty looking stuff out of a crack in the boulder and sent it off to be analyzed. DNA found. Please look into this, as there is so much more, including that the flat earth itself that we live on may be the remains of a giant maybe the remains of a giant. All right, there you go. I've heard about this channel. I've heard a lot of good things, I believe. So here you go. It's Mud Fossil University is the channel this person's mentioning. So there you go. That sparks some interest. Give her. Get at it. Sounds interesting. Doesn't sound surprising to me. Not at this stage of the game. At all. Next. Excuse me. Oh, this is a frickin' encyclopedia. Okay, this is all so far about UFOs. Big one about UFOs. All right, I'm gonna get into that. I'll read it, but another time. All right? And I'm not gonna mark it as red, so I will get into that another time. Sorry, you guys. Well, here's another one. Well, hold on a minute. Mark this as red. Sasquatch sighting in the ocean or a thing, ? Ken, I found this the other day. I was sitting there going through my emails, trying to figure out who has been missed. And I remember this email, and I think I shared it a handful of years ago, and I was curious about it later on, because at first, when I first read it, back in the early stages of doing this, I kind of thinking, what the hell? But I'm going to read it again. It's short, and it's in my backyard. Sasquatch sighting in the ocean or a thing. Hey, Steve, I just want to begin by saying a big thank you, man. You're a good man, and keep up your incredible work. It's about time you and some of your buddies bring this shit to light and provide those of us that have seen these things a vent that we never thought would be possible. As you can imagine, I'd never think in my lifetime that I'd be sharing one of my many bizarre experiences I've had over my 57 years here on this planet. You may find this story totally bizarre. However, I can tell you that it is not bullshit. And there are two of us that witnessed seeing it. Let's call it the thing. I would appreciate it if you have any, it would be appreciated if you have any information on sightings in the waterways to send me some info. I would be grateful for any info you may have. My dad and I began ocean fishing in about 1969 and fell in love with it. We were out every weekend in the spring and summer months near East Souk on Vancouver Island. I used to fish there like a fiend. I was 14, and by this time had gained a lot of experience fishing with my dad since 1969. This sighting was in March of 1976. We knew the area and water very well. It was March, in early spring, and my dad and I couldn't wait any longer to get fishing. We had a beautiful blue sky, warm spring day, and went to our usual spot for some salmon fishing. Little did we know that our day would end with such a bizarre experience. We had been trolling for a couple of hours or so, and we were the only boat out there at the time. Fishing was slow, the water was calm, and conditions were sunny. At about mid-morning, I spotted what appeared to be a deadhead floating towards us from a long ways away. Basically, I could see the top of the log protruding above the waterline. As you know, a typical deadhead is a log that had broken away from a boom and positions itself vertical in the water with just the top of the log appearing above the surface. The thing I remember as being very odd is that the log wasn't undulating vertically as most deadheads will do. This seemed to maintain the same height with little undulation as it drew near. We were trolling west, east, and a little ways offshore, and this thing was coming toward us in a tide line running east-west off of our starboard bow at approximately 2 o'clock. I would estimate that we had been viewing it for at least a few minutes as it was getting closer as we trolled along. As it drew closer, it appeared to be a large log, standing vertical, just like a deadhead. However, just seemed weird how high it was protruding above the water. Now the weird part comes in, and believe me, I have goddamn goosebumps as I write this. Keeping in mind that I never left sight of it from a far distance, and as it drew closer, I could see it was a large log sticking up, very steady, probably about 2 to 3 feet in diameter, and sticking up out of the water approximately 3 feet. Then, as it came closer to the starboard side, I had noticed it had turned, and the goddamn thing had a human-like face that was embedded into it, much like the way a totem is carved in relief. It looked like some of the sketches you see of those things with defined large facial details and protruding forehead. However old and moving, yes, moving, left and right and seeming trapped in this log. Then it saw us and for a couple of seconds locked eyes with us. I called Dad and said, "Look at it. What the F is that?" Excuse me, it was a goddamn log with a human-like face on the side of it, and that was alive. We couldn't believe what we had seen, and within seconds, the thing submerged slowly and never came up again. Needless to say, we were shitting ourselves as we retrieved our gear in minutes and got the F out of Dodge. We didn't want anything to do with whatever it was. I can say truthfully that Dad and myself were not impaired or on drugs during this incident. It literally scared the hides off us. You may air this and use my name if you wish. Thanks for all you do in the name of the truth. How's that for a holy what the F? Right? Isn't that frickin' bizarre? Now, what could be more bizarre? Somebody waking up in the morning and thinking to himself, what am I going to make up today for some attention? And seek out an email through YouTube and send it to them because I'm bored as shit. You know what I mean? It'd be pretty tough to come up with that one, wouldn't it? So, my question is today is to all the tens of thousands of people out there, especially all of you West Coasters on, well, who knows? I don't give a shit, wherever you are on the planet, and if you're on the water a lot, what have you seen? Have you seen something like this? Or even more detail or even more actions from it? What have you guys seen? Right? Don't be scared to share it. I want to hear about it because obviously I'm on the water a lot. And have I ever seen anything crazy on the water out there? Well, one time, I'm just wiping up my glasses here. One time when I was it was my very first boat. It was a 15 and a half foot or 14 and a half, whatever. Hurston Glasscraft with a 50 horse Johnson on it. That was it, no smaller motor. And a buddy of mine and I decided it was one of those days in East Souk, that's where the boat was, and we were always looking across the water at the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State wondering, what the hell's over there? You know, let's go over there one day. I think it's like 20 miles or something at that crossing. And I remember we were thinking, let's just go over there and check it out. I don't know how old we were, 17 or something. 18, I don't know, young and dumb. And we decided, let's go for it. Let's go all the way across and see what's in that town. It would have been Port Angeles, right? And it was one of those blue bomber days, blue sky, big roller waves, not a ripple on the water, but big rollers once you got offshore, and we started going for it, and heading across. I don't know how far we got across, but we got quite a ways from shore. And when we're that far from shore, and then we're looking over where we still had to go, and it was a long ways to go, and then we lost our nerve. But at the time, I remember looking, and I can't describe, I just remember seeing probably about, I don't know, who knows, 100 yards? 100 yards from us? On that smooth ocean surface, but big rollers. So if something comes up and you see it and then disappears between the rollers till it comes up again. And I remember seeing something, I go, what's that? I just remember seeing something big. But it was not smooth. It didn't look like smooth skin of a whale. It definitely did not have a wake. It wasn't swimming. I just seen this big, dark object on the surface of the ocean, and I glanced over, I'm like, holy, what's that? Just dark and big something. No, nothing protruding off of it, just, I haven't a clue. I mean, would it look like possibly what a huge rock below the tide line would look like when the water exposes it, that color. Not necessarily that rough surface, but I just seen this big object. How big would it have been? I don't know, 10 feet across? And deep? I don't know. And I just seen it come up in view and then disappear. And I remember staring at that spot, waiting to see it again. I never saw it again. Right? Never saw it again. Pretty lame story, I know, but that's the only thing I can relate to with this man's testimony here. Anyway, that is such a bizarre freaking thing to see. I don't think there's anybody on the face of the planet that wouldn't shit themselves seeing that. And I guess that story strikes a little close to home because I will guarantee you, wherever they're fishing, I've fished there dozens and dozens of times. I know that it's almost, you feel remote in East Souk because there's no sign of humans on the shore line then forever. Anyway, if any of you ocean goers have seen something like that or anything else similar, don't be scared to share it here, all right? Don't be scared. This is a good place to do it. We want to hear from you, all right? Crazy. Next. Bigfoot experience, title of this email. Hello, Steve. I'm sending this story without much apprehension because it's the truth. Good for you. Welcome to the club. I live in a small town 50 miles south of Buffalo, New York, where there's a lot of hills and extremely woodsy. The road that my folks lived on is a seasonal road, and at the time, one of 3 houses. At one point going down the road, it kind of bottlenecks, and it winds sharp, and there's a real deep ravine on the west side for about half a mile down the road. Anyways, right before that part of the road, there was an old farmhouse that had collapsed, but the old wooden machine shed, approximately 30 feet long and 15 wide, was still standing. Myself and a couple of guys that lived on that same road were out on a bike ride that day because 35 years ago, that's what we did before the internet. We got out of the house and we did shit. I've forgotten to mention that I was 14 and the 2 brothers were 13 and 15. We started looking around the old building and decided to see what was inside. It was pretty dark inside, even though it was fall in the middle of the day. And being nosy kids, we just kept going. We all of a sudden, in the back of the building, we saw, and I do mean we, a large being with 2 red eyes start to stand up. How do I know its eyes were red? Probably because there was enough light that could have made eyes shine to the back of the building. I can tell you how tall the thing was. It was wide and tall, I can't tell you how tall the thing was. It was wide and tall, that much I can tell you. And I was scared shitless. I ran out of the building with them 2 right behind me. I was running so fast that the chain of my bike jumped off the sprocket. We didn't speak of this for a few weeks, and when I did, and who was with me, I became a laughing stock. It wasn't until 30 years later that one of the brothers admitted to me what we saw that day happened. I really didn't give a shit because I did, and it wasn't until 2006 that I had another encounter. Not of the same magnitude, but an encounter. Thanks for giving me a forum to share my story. You can use my name if you want. Take care, and thanks for being a balls-to-the-wall kind of guy. No problem. So welcome is too easy. And another, right? Another multiple witness experience, and the witnesses shit themselves and don't want to talk to each other in a minute. I wonder if they're watching this channel now. Share away, man. You got more? We want to hear your other experience too. Share it. Get it out. What's this one? This is titled, mark this as read. Another one. Vancouver Island. My hunting story. Here we go. In the backyard. Hi, Steve. Thanks for all the valuable guidance and for being a voice for so many, and I'll get right into it. When I was 18 years old, my father took me up the mountains on the backside of Cameron Lake, Vancouver Island. It was my first time hunting this area, and the hike was steep. The morning was beautiful as we watched the sun rise through the trees as we hiked up the mountain. For the first 2 hours, we hiked up this mountain while the regular ruckus surrounded us, squirrels chirping, birds singing, and wind blowing, as the light brought the forest to life. And here's where it got weird. We got to a large plateau on one of the mountains, and as soon as we stepped out on a flat ground, all of the wildlife went silent. The singing birds stopped, eerily so. It was noticeable. I remember my dad looking at me with this dumb look on his face and being able to hear my heartbeat. There wasn't any fear, just confusion, but we kept on. About 40 yards further, up on a tree, there was a large gash, very similar to the territorial mark of a grizzly up on the tree, only it was about 8 feet up, and the claw grooves were very wide, almost like it was ripped, not clawed. We stopped to start it because, as far as we were aware, there are no grizzly bears on the island that far south. I'd only heard of a few on the north end of the island. This concerned us a bit, and under our breath we decided to get off of the plateau quickly. After a few more paces, I stopped and looked at my dad and said, "What's that sound?" I remember hearing a faint whistling sound, and all of a sudden, thwack, a boulder bigger than my head smacked the tree in front of us. We were on a flat plateau. We very quickly made it to the end of the trail back down the ridge. And as we were sprint walking, we both heard sounds that I'll never forget. A gut-wrenching scream that sounded like a man yelling at the top of his lungs and a lion roaring at the same time. As soon as we got back down the ridge, the forest came alive again. My dad and I were floored. I didn't see anything, and we have spoken about it many times, trying to wrap our heads around it. I'm still baffled and take much comfort in hearing the similar experiences you share. Thank you again. Okay, also here's a video that a few friends of mine took while they were on a photography trip on the mainland of BC. Keep in mind these guys are on a... Okay, gotcha. I don't know if that's going to come through. I don't think it is. Oh, it is. Check it out. I think a bunch of us have seen that video. And it's going to be hard to tell if that was one of these people or not until somebody actually goes down there and recreates the video, right? Very similar to that Tri-Cooney Peak video. There you go, Cameron Lake. So, what can I say about Cameron Lake? Cameron Lake's just up the road. And recently I spoke with a guy, great guy, works at an outdoor store. And he told me that him and his friends were fishing, and I believe they were at that picnic camp, that picnic pullout on Cameron Lake, but the one closest to the big timber, you know, the west end of the lake. There in that pullout there. Fishing in the evening at last light, and they could hear something screaming from the top on, what would that be, the north side of the lake? Yeah, it would be north. The north side of the lake at the top, probably where you were, scream roaring across to the other side. And I think they said there's another one on their side, south side of the lake, roaring back. And Cameron Lake, all the way through the whole highway, on top of the hump, in that timber. The timber itself at the bottom, everybody hikes around and goes and does the tourist shit. Lots going on there. A lot. There's a lot going on around this whole town, including my backyard. There you go, Cameron Lake. And you locals watching, go ahead and share it, man. Go ahead and share it. All right, I just got a text from my buddy with the excavator. He's going to be here pretty quick, so I'm going to have to cut this a little short this morning. This is titled My Sasquatch Experience. One more thing, if you and your dad still hunt up there, I don't think it's been logged at the top there yet. And if you do go back up there, I'd love to see a photo of that scratch, that gouge in the tree. Excuse me. My name is Kyler. I lived in Arizona pretty much my entire life. I've gone camping in the mountains and in the deserts of Arizona more times than I can count since my childhood. I started rifle and archery hunting in northern Arizona about 20 years ago, and I never really had anything out of the ordinary happen to me on any of my trips in the wilderness, except one time I was archery deer hunting in Unit 12A north of the Grand Canyon. It was September 2007, and I was with a few of my friends who were also hunting. I'd hunted that area for about 6 years in a row with the same group of friends. I was starting to get a little frustrated because it seemed like I was the only one out of the whole group that was never getting any shots at any bucks. Well, this particular year, two of my friends were able to each get a buck out of the same tree stand. So they told me to climb up into the stand and told me that I'd probably get a chance to finally getting a buck. So I excitedly climbed up into the tree stand, and I think it was the first day I was in the stand, and these two bucks come running up to the water hole the stand was set up next to. One of the bucks went right to the edge of the water in front of me, and I was finally able to take a shot. But as I drew my bow back, the sound of the arrow sliding on the arrow rest of my bow caused the deer to look straight at me. I didn't know what to do, so I froze for a second out of inexperience. And after a couple seconds in this frozen state, I decided that I wasn't going to be able to stay in this position very long with my bow half drawn, so I quickly drew my bow back the rest of the way and shot, but missed just over the buck's back. I couldn't believe it. I was so upset with myself. My friends and I would target practice for a couple of months before this hunt every year, and I was the best shot out of all of them. I finally get a shot at a deer, and I miss. I used a rangefinder to a bunch of different locations around the water hole from the tree stand, and the spot the deer was standing was only 14 yards from where I was sitting. I couldn't believe it. So, the whole rest of the day and the next morning, I was beating myself up about what I could have done better and how much I couldn't believe I missed such an easy shot and so on. Anyway, the next morning, I climbed up the tree stand again, still bummed out. And I've been sitting up there for about 2 hours when, much to my surprise, another buck came trotting right up to the exact same spot I'd missed the other buck the day before. Armed with the knowledge from my experience the day before, I pulled back and shot. My arrow passed through the deer. He ran about 50 yards when he fell over and died. I was so excited I got the chance to redeem myself, I couldn't wait to tell the guys back at camp. So, I backed my truck up to where the deer was, and I pulled him into the truck bed and headed off down the road, as I didn't want to leave a fresh gut pile next to the tree stand and water hole in case one of the other guys in my group that hadn't filled their tag yet wanted to try their luck in the stand. I drove back to where our camp was located, which was a little 2-track road that led up the hill past our camp off the main dirt road, and I decided that taking that road to the top of the hill a ways past our camp would be a good place to clean out my deer. That was a long sentence. So I drove up this little road a ways and stopped and pulled the deer out of my truck and started to gather my knife and water and other stuff that I would need to clean out this deer. When all of a sudden I got this creepy feeling like someone or something had their eyes on me. I've never felt that kind of hair-raising feeling before or since while being out in the forest. I immediately stopped what I was doing and started looking very intently at the surrounding tree lines all around me as I was basically in the middle of a clearing. I saw nothing. At the time, I just thought it was a mountain lion or a bear or something like that. They caught the scent of the dead deer and was waiting for me to leave so it could have a free meal. So just as a precaution, I grabbed my Springfield 1911 Model 45 out of my truck and kept it with me while I was cleaning out the deer, always making sure that there was nothing sneaking up on me while I was working. I finished cleaning out the deer without incident, loaded it back into my truck and drove to camp and hung the deer in the tree. I kind of put that creepy feeling out of my mind until later the same day, and I was in camp by myself. The other two guys I was with were still out hunting, and it was getting dark. They weren't back yet, so I decided to build a fire. The sun went down, it was pitch black out, and I was standing next to the fire when I got that same feeling again of something watching me. Again, the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I was doing my best to stare past the fire to try and see what I could in the forest with the firelight at what might be that is staring at me, but again, nothing. So as I was staring into the forest, kind of scared at this point, the logs in the fire decided to shift and fall, which almost made me crap my pants. It scared me so bad. And I laugh about that now because it sounds like some stupid scene from a cheesy horror film, but I swear it happened like that. Like I said, at the time, I thought it might have been a bear or mountain lion wanting to get at my deer, but was too afraid to come any closer. But watching your channel and hearing other people's stories about getting that terrible feeling like someone or something is watching them, I most definitely think it was probably a Sasquatch, even though I never actually saw anything. I wish I lived closer to that area because I'd like to set up a trail cameras in the area for my own informational gathering purposes, as opposed to trying to prove anything to anyone else, because I know there are people out there that are always going to be naysayers, no matter how much evidence you put in front of their face. And I'm sure I'm guilty of being one of those people a time or two in my life, so I try not to judge too harshly. I do still like to spend time in that area of the forest in Arizona. It's my favorite place to hunt and camp, but I don't get to do too much of that up there because it's an 8 to 9 hour car ride one way just to get up there. So I don't get to visit there as often as I like. And it's also fairly difficult to get drawn for a tag to hunt that area as well. Thank you for taking the time to read my email, and I truly hope and pray to be able to take a guided hunting trip with you up there in BC. I'd love to visit there sometime. Looks like a beautiful country. Sincerely, Kyler T. Okay, Kyler, pretty long email for a feeling, but that's fine. We all deliver differently. We all deliver in our own ways. It's a good hunting story for sure, and you're not the only one to have that feeling. But you know what, you guys, like I said before, there's some people that experience that feeling of being watched, and it's so freaking intense, it's hard to put into words smoothly to put us there, right? But you got to understand, to motivate someone to write an email, it's got to be pretty intense. Just like when somebody hears the screams or the roars. It's hard to get it across what they experience, but it's a huge impact on them, right? Obviously, this hunter it was a big impact on him having that feeling. Now, I'm going to have to cut it short, you guys. Sorry. Well, all right. He's not here yet. Oh, see, I'll squeeze out one more. This one doesn't look too long. I effed around and found out is a tireless email. Hey, Steve Arena. My name is Joseph Mustovich. I have been a geologist for about 18 years now. Currently, I'm working for a refinery that requires most of my time on a four-wheeler. It didn't pay well to start, but on my second month effing around in the woods, I found a lanthanide deposit, and the company bought the land for pennies. I got a huge bonus, which paid for my house and my wife's absurd diamond ring, which she keeps in a safe deposit box at the bank. You're lucky to have a sane woman, Steve. Why is it the hotter they are, the crazier they are? Anyway, I was back. Shit, my buddy's pulling up. I'm going to have to come back later on. Time to get this job done, but I'll be back later on. I'll make sure I finish that email. Later, have a great day.